Hello listeners, this video discusses the interpretation of cultures written by Clifford Geertz in the year 1973. Let's see an introduction about the author and the work. Clifford Geertz, born in the year 1926, died in the year 2006. He was a leading American anthropologist and a pioneer of symbolic or interpretative anthropology. His book, The Interpretation of Culture, published in the year 1973, is a collection of essays that significantly shifted how culture is studied. Greetz believed that culture is not something one can measure, but rather something to interpret like a text, a play, or a piece of art. The book argues that the task of anthropology is to understand the meaning of actions within their cultural context. Let us see the core concept that he discussed in this work, culture as a web of meaning. Greetz defines culture as a system of inherited conceptions expressed in symbolic forms by means of which people communicate, perpetuate, and develop their knowledge about and attitudes towards life. According to him, humans are symbol-making beings. We live in a world full of signs and symbols, gestures, rituals, clothes, language, beliefs that carry social meanings. He famously says, man is an animal suspended in webs of significance he himself has spun. This means humans create their own worlds of meaning, and understanding culture is understanding these webs. For example, take the action of raising an eyebrow. In some cultures, it signals curiosity, in others, skepticism, or even flirtation. The meaning isn't in the act, but in how it's interpreted within that culture. The next is think description, the heart of Greetz method. This is Greetz's most influential contribution. Think description means going beyond surface level observation. It includes describing not just what people do, but why they do and what it means to them. The example is the wink. A wink and a blink may look similar physically, but a blink is involuntary. A wink is loaded with meaning. It could signal humor, conspiracy, or flirtation. Without context, we cannot tell the difference. A thick description gives us that context. Famous case study is the Balinese cockfight. Greetz attended an illegal cockfight in Bali and analyzed it as a symbolic performance. On the surface, it's a brutal game. But through think description, Greetz showed the cockfight reflects masculine pride, social hierarchy, rivalry, and status anxiety. The cocks themselves are symbolic extensions of their male owners. The key point out of this is, culture is not behavior itself, but the meaning behind behavior. Anthropologists must act like interpreters of signs and symbols. The next is, culture is public, not private. For Greetz, culture does not exist inside individual minds. It is found in shared public symbols like rituals, ceremonies, language, gestures, and myths are all expressions of culture. The anthropologist's job is to decode these symbols like a literary critic would interpret a novel. For example, a wedding ceremony is not just a celebration, but it's filled with symbols. For example, the white dress, the ring, rituals like exchange of vows, walking down the aisle, and shared cultural meanings about love, family, purity, and commitment. Understanding culture, then, is about understanding the shared codes and values that guide such practices. The next is anthropology as interpretation, not experimentation. Greetz challenged the idea that anthropology should be objective or scientific like physics or biology. He emphasized that anthropology is an interpretative science The anthropologist is not like a chemist in a lab, but more like a translator or storyteller trying to make sense of how people make sense of their world. The key idea here is what we call our data are really our constructions of other people's constructions of what they and their compatriots are up to. This recursive view reminds us that anthropology involves layers of interpretation. The next is critique of positivism and universalism. Earlier anthropologists like Malinowski or Radcliffe Brown tried to find universal laws of human behavior. Greetz rejected this. He argued that every culture is unique, meaning every culture is local and context dependent. There are no grand one-size-fits-all theories, only particular stories, rituals, and symbols that must be read carefully. To summarize Greetz' The Interpretation of Cultures, he changed the way we study culture, from science to interpretation, from objectivity to empathy. He taught us to read culture like a text, to listen, observe, and reflect deeply. His work remains influential not only in anthropology, but also in literature, religious studies, cultural studies, and sociology. The key takeaways are culture is a web of shared meanings and symbols. Think description is deep, contextual analysis of cultural behavior. Interpretation is central to understanding what actions mean. Culture is public, like symbols and rituals are shared, not private. Anthropologist's role is to be an interpreter of meanings, not discoverer of facts. A small comparison done by the earlier anthropologists with Greetz. Anthropologist Bronislaw Malinowski, his approach is functionalism. His focus is what function does a cultural practice serve? Anthropologist E. Evans Pitchard, his approach is structural functionalism. His focus area is social order and kinship. Now, Clifford Geertz, his approach is interpretative and symbolic. His focus question is, what does this practice mean to the people involved? Greetz didn't ask, what does this ritual do for the society? But rather, what does this ritual mean for the people who perform it? To summarize the whole work, Greetz revolutionized the way we understand culture. He moved anthropology away from cold, detached observation toward a more empathetic, interpretative lens, one that treats human action not as raw data, but as texts filled with symbols, emotions, and meanings. He reminds us that culture is not a thing we can measure, it's a story we must learn to read. Whether it's a ritual, a handshake, a festival, or even a cockfight, Greetz shows that everything we do is part of larger narrative. To truly understand another culture, we must do more than observe. We must interpret, question, and listen deeply. So as you step out into the world, whether as scholars, observers, or simply curious human beings, remember this: to understand a culture is not to decode it with certainty, but to enter into its world of meaning with humility and attention. In a world divided with difference, Greet's legacy reminds us that meaning connects us all and interpretation is the bridge. Thank you for listening. If you have query, please write them down. And if you have suggestion to make videos, please write them down too. Thank you.